Hi, I'm the Naked Fairy, and today I want to continue sharing with you some of the core principles that I developed and that I think are very useful in dealing with PTSD when you get pushed back into one of your emotional bubbles. And boy, I've been pushed. Saturday was my birthday, a very good day, and I like getting older and very happy to be getting older. It was also my father's birthday, or it would have been. My father died on December 30th, 1987, and I was 23, and I had a 3.5-month-old daughter, and I'd been married for 5 years. And I didn't know it at the time, but that event would eventually be the catalyst that pushed me into recovery. See, my father was my emotional anchor, and in the preceding 9 months to his death, we had gotten even closer because I really pushed. My dad wasn't one to open up willingly, and I really pushed. I wanted to know things. And while I was relieved that his very painful battle with cancer was over, I was devastated. My father had been an emotional anchor in a way I didn't even realize at the time. And as the next year continued, my spiral into depression and anxiety and disassociation and the panic attacks and the fear, it just grew and grew. All the while I'm taking care of this little baby. Now I have to tell you that I did a very, very good job taking care of that baby. Physically, that is. Emotionally, I wasn't there. Something she and I both paid the price for years later. But at the time, I was taking care of her physically, but not feeling it. I expected some nice older lady to knock on my door one day and say, "Thank you very much. You've done an excellent job caring for this child, but I'm her real mom and I'll take her now." That didn't happen. And around her first birthday, I put her down for a nap one day, and I had been crying all day. And I went and I sat at the top of my stairs, and I just knew I couldn't go on. It was intolerable. There was no reason to go on. Life was absolute misery. And I believed my husband would be better off without me. And I didn't want to go on. I just wanted it to end. I can't begin to convey to you how much I wanted it to end. But I thought about my daughter. And I knew in that moment that if I was to die, if I was to kill myself, my mother, in her grief over both my father's death and my own, would swoop in and take that baby from my husband, and in his grief he'd let her and never get her back. And I also knew that I could not let my mother raise that child. No matter how awful I was, and no matter how badly I felt, I was the best mom around for that child. I could not, absolutely could not, let my mom raise my daughter. And so I was literally between a rock and a hard place. I didn't want to live, and I couldn't die. So that really left me no choice. I had to get better. Wasn't sure how, but I had to. And that night when my husband came home, I sat down with him and I very nervously told him, I need to get therapy. I need to figure out how to heal from what my cousin did to me. And he just went, "Oh, thank God." I said, "Why didn't you say anything?" And he said, "Well, you had to get there on your own." And I don't know if he ever realized how close I came to not getting there. But I did, and the following Monday, I made arrangements and very shortly thereafter started weekly therapy and group therapy. Now, I can tell you that it didn't immediately get better. In fact, for a little while it felt worse as I dove into things that I had kept closed off. But it did eventually get better. And it took time, but it actually has gotten a lot better. Because while I've had a rough time the last couple of days, wow, I want to live forever. Life is great. It's amazing. And I've watched my daughter for 29 years grow into an extraordinary young woman. We've had our differences and our difficulties for sure. But today when she looks at me and says, "I love you," or when from across the room she signs me, because she likes to do that, and I sign her back, it's a kind of twist on "I love you," but it means I love you and we're okay. Because we weren't always. Because I was in a really bad place. But I got better. And that's what today's core principle is. That it gets better. It really, really gets better. It doesn't mean that it stays better all the time or that it gets better quickly. It happens gradually. And in the beginning you don't even really notice. But soon you do. You notice that you're having little patches of sunlight. And those patches get longer and longer. Till eventually it becomes a surprise when you're popped back into the bubble. And I have to tell you now that sometimes when I get popped in the bubble, I get kind of angry. Because, I really think I've done enough, and I've been in that bubble enough. And after I've been out for a while, I really don't want to go back in. But it does happen. And even while I'm getting angry, I know that I'll get past that, because it gets better. Now, for me, the key to getting better was believing that I was going to get better. And that's about faith. And when I talk about faith, I'm not talking about religion or God or a higher power. Faith is simply belief in things unseen. That means believing something when you can't see it. Believing that the road continues past the curve you can't see beyond. Believing that the sun is going to rise in the morning, even when it's dark when you go to bed. That's a little bit of faith. And that's what you need. You need a tiny bit of faith. I was raised Christian, and that has informed my view of faith. And there's a verse in the Bible where Jesus said to his disciples, "If you have the faith of a grain of mustard, you can move mountains." Now, a mustard seed is very tiny, and I've heard lots of sermons about this particular passage. But this is what I've come to realize, that faith is so very, very powerful that you only need a tiny, tiny bit. You don't need to do it all the time. You're not going to manage it 24/7. But sometimes you just need a smidge. You need this much faith. Actually, you need this much more faith. More faith than fear. Just this much. This tiny little bit. That's all. Just saying to yourself, it gets better. It gets better. It really, really does. Now, there's been a campaign for a couple years on the internet of celebrities and well-known people saying it gets better. And this message is largely aimed at young people as they search and find their personal identities. And it can seem at times in your life that you're all alone, and knowing it gets better is huge. But this isn't just for young people trying to figure out who and what they are in life. This is for anybody struggling with the trauma, anybody struggling with abuse or hurt. It gets better. And it doesn't matter when your journey starts. If you're 15 or 50 or 80, it gets better. It really, really does. It's okay that you don't believe it. Just keep saying it. Keep saying it. And once again, this is something that you can put on little post-it notes all around you. It gets better. Even when you don't believe it, say it. It gets better. It will get better. I will get better. Because it's true. It will get better. You've made it this far. And all you need is this much more faith than fear. Just this little smidge. And you can do it. It gets better. I didn't believe that. I didn't believe that when I was 23 years old. And I was sitting there weeping and not wanting to go on. I didn't believe it, but I had to try. And I'm so glad I did. I just celebrated my 54th birthday, and it hasn't always been smooth, and it's rarely been easy. But it gets better, and it's worth it. It's worth every moment of the fight. The fight to survive. The fight to heal. The choice is difficult because it means a lot of work, but it gets better. And while you're getting better, while you're fighting the fights that you're fighting, while you're clawing your way out of whatever bubble you have popped into, always remember that clothing is optional, but consent is not.